And, I want to circle back to something you were saying about that assessment,
Yes.
because you were saying, you were looking at a picture and, the boy is pushing the girl, or I know the assessment.
Hmm.
What is that section actually testing?
Syntax.
It's not testing syntax.
Oh, it's not?
It's testing people's ability to categorize. I mean, when we look at it and we think about, yes, syntax is what it's looking at, but a lot of it has to do with the boy, the girl, and the pronouns.
Mm-hmm.
That is testing people's ability to categorize, which is not a linguistic skill. I understand that we talk a lot about categories in speech language pathology. It's like one of my favorite topics is categories. Ooh, what can we do with categories? Because it's the best way to expand sort of that semantic web. But the thought of the actual construct of man and woman, or boy and girl, that's not a linguistic construct. That's a social construct. And so what we're asking kids to do is to leave their language center, think which one of these looks more like who I've been conditioned to say girl to, and then
Yes.
point.
Yeah.
And so it's no longer a language based activity when you
Mhm.
force someone to categorize in that way.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to kind of bring that up because I understand there are a lot of problems with a lot of standardized assessments, and there are problems just in general with standardization. And there are big testing companies really working hard to change these things, but that
Okay.
takes a lot of time. So be patient with the testing companies. They've gotten all the negative feedback. They know that their assessments are problematic, and they're working on it. But it's more about making sure that that if you're giving those assessments to a kid who is trans, I would skip sections like that. You're being able to make a clinical decision about a kid, whether or not they have a language disorder, without kind of forcing them to go through like a boy girl activity. And there are so many prompts like that. And even
Yes.
just in
Yes.
your therapy, my own 6-year-old comes home a lot with activities that he's gotten from his speech therapist. Actually, his speech therapist is wonderful, like more than wonderful. That he's gotten from his reading specialist is where those materials mostly come from.
Mhm.
And they oftentimes, the girl is flying a kite. The girl. Why do we talk so much about the girl, the boy? Nobody says those things out loud. We use people's names. We use, look at that person. We use so many more types of language than the girl and the boy. Why are all of our materials based around those two things? Why does that start so many sentences in speech therapy? It
You're right.
shouldn't. Of course, there's nothing wrong with being a girl or a boy, or pointing, out somebody who is a boy, like, oh, that's my friend Jason, he's a boy. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But if a picture of somebody flying a kite who has pigtails just said the kid is flying a kite, number one, that's a way to make your language inclusive, so that just in case that cartoon kid has pigtails, and the kid in front of you has pigtails, but the kid with pigtails in front of you is not a girl, you're not making that person feel that they're being categorized by the way that they look. It's really important to think about that. And when you have prompts, you can change them. You don't have to read off of you don't have to read off of your card deck. I know it's different with assessment, but you don't have to read off of your card deck the prompts that start with the girl, the boy. You can use names. You know, Caleb is swinging. What's he doing now? And that way, the kid has a name to map with the pronoun. The way that I teach pronouns is always to teach someone's name and then their pronoun. I don't ever teach this. These are pronouns for a boy. These are pronouns for a girl, because that's just teaching like advanced guessing based on how someone you think someone should look, right? It's not really teaching the skill of learning a pronoun. The
Can
way
I
that I
ask a
teach,
question on that?
of course.
Can I stop you there? Because this is an area that I've always wanted to clarify as well. What if we are teaching pronouns, he, she, they, if we give context? So you have that, that green card deck with the action verbs, and you put out a picture and you say, what if you put in context to say the gender, and then what pronoun would we use with that gender? Would that be appropriate?
I still think that the gender is irrelevant.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because you can
So we
be,
move away from teaching pronouns altogether?
well, no, I think we need to teach pronouns, but I think that we don't need to tie them to gender.
Okay.
This is Michelle, her pronouns are she, her. This is
Okay.
AC, his pronouns are he, him. This is
And now
Ryan, their
make a
pronouns
sentence?
are they, them. Um, and when you've got those cards, because if you're still teaching, he, him is for boys, she, her is for girls. People are still going to be mapping those to their concept of
Mm.
what someone looks like as a boy. And then they might misgender your sister's partner who has short hair just because she has short hair, because in their mind, you've taught them that, in your card deck, everyone who has short hair is he, him. So you can be incidentally teaching misgendering by just trying to teach pronouns. And there's no, that's not to say that people are doing things intentionally. But of course you can say, like, this is Colby, she's a girl, she's swinging, because there's nothing wrong with being a girl or identifying someone as a girl. But to kind of say, boy he, girl she, because somebody could say, I'm a boy but I use they them pronouns, and that would be perfectly valid and
Okay.
would kind of fly in the face of people who have learned to categorize in such a rigid way. The way that I teach pronouns is by teaching a person and their pronouns, and sort of saying, well, you can never really guess. Like, and when the kids are like, well, the boy pronoun is he and the girl pronoun is she, I say, well, that's usually right. And I totally get it. And thank you for reminding me that that's what everyone thinks. And I want to take a minute to ask you, and I'm pretending I'm talking to a kid, how can we tell if someone's a boy or a girl? And like, kids will be like, oh well, look at this picture, he's got a soccer ball and short hair. And I'm like, but your teacher, she's the soccer coach and she has short hair and she's not a boy. And just kind of breaking that down and being like, so it's really important that we just learn everyone's pronouns. Obviously, if you overhear them, you're learning someone's pronouns. If you know someone, you're like, this is your teacher, she's Miss Smith, she uses she, her pronouns. You know, that's completely fine, but making the broad assumption, like, this person looks like this, so they are this, and this is their pronoun, that can be harmful. And making sure that kids don't have that as their exposure to learning pronouns. I see a lot of like really cute materials, and I want to say this because they're super cute, on Teachers Pay Teachers. Contact me if you want to work with me on your materials, people, because I've done it
Oh,
with a lot of
awesome.
people, and it's really fun. We dive in, it takes like an hour, and we just do an audit on your pronouns materials and make sure that they aren't,
I love
um,
that.
the cutest materials that I helped someone work on. They had like a blue box with a bow tie for he, him, and a pink box with a bow tie on the top. It was like one tissue box down with the bow tie this way, and one tissue box up with the bow tie on the head. And then one was for he and one was for she. And I was like, this is adorable. And there are so many ways that we could make, these boxes, but literally you're putting people in boxes. Do we want to
Yes.
be doing that? And she was like, oh, whoops. And,
And she was
we,
open to working with you and recreating.
yeah, oh yeah.
Mhm.
Because people don't want, I mean, when you think about literally taking a picture of someone and saying, he is swimming, and then putting it into the blue box, after getting the pronoun right, you're literally putting people into boxes. And that's something that can be really harmful. So,
And I don't mean to laugh about it because it is harmful, but the way you're describing it, that's exactly what's happening. You're right.
yeah, and we don't want to do that. We want to teach kids that they are perfect and they are beautiful exactly as they are. And that doesn't mean that we want to change them into transgender people. It doesn't mean that that we even have to talk about or center gender in our sessions. I find that I very rarely talk about gender when I'm talking about pronouns. I just talk about pronouns
Mhm.
and how we learn them. And what if I don't know someone's pronouns? What do I do? Well, we can use our resources. Let's think about it. Let's go back in the book. Do they use any pronouns for this person? let's go back and read some more.
That's
Let's
great.
ask someone,
Mhm.
what pronouns did this person use? And if we can't figure it out, if it's a real person, we can ask. And if it's not a real person, like if it's a fictional character who we haven't used any pronouns for, we can use they them pronouns for them, and we can practice that, or we can assign them whatever pronouns you want, because this is your time with me, and just kind of like not getting into the sort of like, this cat is a girl, no, this cat is a boy argument with a student. Like, if we're talking about a cartoon or something that's really unknown or abstract, there's sort of no reason to assign gender to that. So gender doesn't really come into play as much as people think when you're talking about pronouns. You don't have to sit and explain non-binary genders to preschoolers, though you can. But you don't have to. You can just say, well, you can't always tell someone's pronouns, and not all people are boys or girls. So it's kind of, it's really important that we learn all the ways that people can be, and people can look, and people can use pronouns. But my pronouns are he, him. Remind me what yours are, and then just move on with your day, because you don't have to sit there and teach concepts that are brand new to you to children. You can just decenter the gender and categorizing from your pronoun teaching.
Mm. Let's talk about those pronouns for a second, because I have when you subscribe to your email marketing through your website, you get these great free downloadable labels. So we've got he, him, we've got she, her. Now, for anybody that is listening that might not understand, when you have things like she, they, he, they, can you explain that?
Of course. So sometimes people use multiple pronouns. Some transgender and non-binary people use multiple pronouns, and some cisgender people might use multiple pronouns. That just depends on anyone's individual preference.
Okay.
But not everyone uses just one static pronoun set. This is especially prevalent in the non-binary community. And when we think about the overlap between transgender people and autistic people and people with ADHD are 7 to 10 times more likely to be transgender or non-binary, and even more so to be under the LGBTQIA plus umbrella. So we really have to think about folks that we serve who may use multiple pronouns, and how do we do that? Can I pretend? That you use multiple pronouns, and so I can talk about you as Stephanie and use she, they pronouns. Is that
Yes.
okay?
These are those beautiful
So,
examples I'm talking about that I see in your course. Yes. Thank you for
okay.
asking.
So this is Stephanie. I just met her, like, I don't know, about an hour ago, and they brought me on this podcast, or it's not really a podcast, it's a YouTube channel. And she's interviewing me, and I really enjoy getting to know them through the process. And I just use them interchangeably. Everyone knows I'm talking about Stephanie. And if
Mhm.
somebody gets confused and says, who are you talking about? And say, oh, I'm talking about Stephanie. Stephanie uses she, they pronouns. So I'm going to be using them interchangeably. It's very important when someone uses two sets of pronouns that you use both sets of pronouns, so that the person can feel fully seen and acknowledged in, their whole personhood from you, and that you don't just choose one set and stick with it. Especially based on the fact that if a person uses she, they pronouns, I bet you a lot of people are going to be only using she, her pronouns for that person, because it's a lot easier. They've practiced she, her pronouns. Everyone has practiced she, her, and he, him
Right.
pronouns. Not a lot of people have practiced they, them pronouns, or she, they, or he, they pronouns. And what's really important is that we learn to acknowledge these things, and we learn to normalize them, so that they aren't political debates that impact the mental health and well-being of the transgender population across the country.
Yes, and I think too, it's important that for people who are listening who maybe aren't quite sure about this yet, or are still learning, and they get into a situation where maybe they go into Zoom and they see pronouns and they're not sure how to speak yet, we can always revert back to, like you said, the person's name. We can just use, AC has AC's report that AC is going to go over now, right?
I
So
do. And
yes.
also, there are other ways. If you don't know pronouns, or let's pretend you're in one of those situations where someone has told you their pronouns and they don't line up with what's in their documentation or what their parents call them, even if you're a medical practitioner, pronouns, as you know, are words that you substitute for, an object or a person in place of their name.
Mhm.
There are other words that we can use in our documentation that are not gender pronouns. So let's pretend I'm writing a note about Stephanie, but I can't use Stephanie's pronouns in the note because they're they, them. And I want to make sure that I honor Stephanie. So now your pronouns are they, them. I've changed them again. I want to honor Stephanie's personhood, but I can't use they, them pronouns in a note because that would out them. So I'm going to say Stephanie was seen today for an MTBI. Patient presents with mild fatigue, word finding issues, and I just use patient or client instead of they, them, or instead of any pronoun. Use another word to substitute. So, you can use patient, client, or student as your pronoun. Those are fantastic pronouns. I mean, I know they're actual nouns, but talking about someone's relationship to you or to the space is another way to refer to them without using a gender pronoun.
So,
and then every sentence doesn't start with Stephanie.
Right. I like that. So the teacher, the client, the kiddos, the family. So you can use the nouns in place as well. Now, tell me about this last one before we go. This last one that is blank. So I'm understanding that there are other pronouns, right, beyond these?
Yes, there are pronouns beyond binary pronouns, and there are pronouns beyond they, them. So not every non-binary person uses they, them pronouns. Some might use she, her pronouns or he, him pronouns, but some people use what are called neo-pronouns. And if you ask me, they're not very neo. They're not very new. They've been in, parlance in the queer community since before they, them was really common. And these include things like see and hear. So if your pronouns are now see, here, I would say, Stephanie is with me right now. She has long blonde hair. Her pronoun badge is kind of off camera. I would just use those other pronouns. And some people use neopronouns as a way of expressing who they are. Some people use neopronouns in addition to using gender pronouns. Some neopronouns are someone's gender pronouns. Some people use it pronouns, which is really fascinating. I love that a younger generation is embracing all sorts of different pronouns and trying them out. And I do know a couple of young folks who use it as their pronoun, which is really interesting because I've always taught to teach object pronouns and personal pronouns separately, but some people use object pronouns as their pronouns. So the reason why that's blank is for anyone who uses pronouns that are outside of she, her, he, him, or they, them, because I can't print a comprehensive list of neopronouns. I could, but it wouldn't apply to the broad majority of people who are getting that paper. Like, ooh, pronoun stickers, because you don't necessarily need a big printout of neopronouns. But the blank is for anyone who uses pronouns that are not listed on the form. And neopronouns are awesome. There are so many, and you can even make your own up.
Wow. So much education on this. There's so much to learn. There's so much learning that needs to, we need to always be evolving in our language, in our learning, as you state again, like have your language be able to evolve as the culture evolves. And I think that, I want to be in this, space of having an evolution of continuous growth. I'm always excited to learn more. And it's really an opportunity to open our minds, to liberate our minds. And, we need to begin to attune to one another in a more conscious and in a more wise way. We need to wake up, myself too. I need to wake up to my habits of harm. I need to slow down and really begin to look at, okay, so I have this perception, but where did this come from? Like when I'm at Kasha and I'm shouting out from my booth, oh, it's that man over there that you want to go talk to. Now I want to stop and I want to say, it's that person wearing the red shirt with the blue pants over there that you want to go talk to. It's, I'm seeing now all of my conditioning, and as I'm learning, I'm growing and I'm stopping. And I think you talk about this in your course too. If you make a mistake, that's okay. Don't make a huge deal about it to make anybody feel uncomfortable. correct it and move on. And that's what I'm doing, so I can continue to not be stuck in this hamster wheel, the same thinking, and that, and from that, conditioning. So I think
And
educating in cultural responsiveness really is planting the seeds to a culture of care, and that's what you're doing. You are waking up the world so beautifully, and speech pathologists, and I'm so excited about the platforms that you have and the resources that you're sharing. And there is beauty in our differences, and we need to acknowledge and appreciate that. And happy Valentine's Day to you.
absolutely. Happy Valentine's Day to you. And thank you for allowing me to truly describe what I think goes into person centered care, which is, at the core of our code of ethics, which involves seeing the whole person and honoring who they are in our space and what they bring, and all of the beautiful differences that we inhabit as a people can all exist in our offices, in our spaces, in our classrooms, and we don't have to force people into boxes. We can allow people to express who they are, and that's what we do as communication professionals.
Thank you so much.